Command G actually worked. Good evening
Hey.
and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 79, featuring four superficially intelligent beings ready to make you some disturbing artwork and track your influencer selves throughout the internet and creep you out. We've got
That's what we're here
news.
for.
What a sales job.
All right. Hi, Mom.
Hey,
Yeah.
we've got some big news for you right here. Instead of me like wasting precious seconds rattling off a ton of links, which I sometimes forget to do. How about
Did you
just
finally do
go
it?
to momentous.tv/links. Look at that nice short URL. It's not pretty yet. It's very, very quick and dirty, but there it is. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Flickr. Remember that? LinkedIn,
Oh my God.
Twitter, Vimeo, and YouTube. There is varying amounts of content on each of those links, but it's one link, momentous.tv/links. And someday we'll even have a lower third to help remind you of that fact.
Doesn't Flickr now sound like a swipe dating app or something?
Flick left and flick right.
Yeah.
Isn't that something you do after picking your nose? Anyway, momentous.tv/links.
Much easier.
Let's jump right into some follow-up, shall we? Oh, but before that, welcome back, Ray. We missed you for a couple of weeks.
Thanks.
Oh, look at that.
What?
It's tiny. It's tiny.
Okay, I'll
Well
flip it
done.
around.
Still awesome. I like that. You didn't prep us for it.
Real quick, Gray, you were
Yes.
away for a couple of weeks. You gave us a little preview of what you were going to be doing. And now that you've done it, what's your 30-second recap of what you did and how it made you feel?
Burning Man is absolutely an incredible experience. It is not a festival. That was survival camping. It was 46 degrees during the
geez.
day. There were 3 dust storms that if you did not have a respirator on, you probably had a lung full of silica. It was some great music. There was some really cool stuff. On the Sunday night, somebody had posted that Diplo was going to... So Diplo actually did play Burning Man, but a camp had posted that he would be playing early in the week. And so I actually decided to go to bed and just get a good night's sleep, and a few of my friends did not. So they got punked. And then later in the week, Rufus Du Sol, who was in Europe at the time, was purported to be at another camp. 10,000 people ended up in that intersection, including myself, and I thought it was the funniest damn thing ever. I met Dr. Paul Stamets, a mycologist and namesake of the character on Star Trek Discovery.
I was just going to say, I recognize him from a current science fiction series. Go on.
Yes. Yeah. And the guy can cut one hell of a rug. He dances like a dervish, and it's kind of amazing. So did a little bit of volunteering with the Leave No Trace outreach team. There are 10 principles that guide the Burning Man community, and Leave No Trace is one of them, which means that you don't let things damage the playa, the desert, the Black Rock City. And so we go around and basically point out to people like your fuel's supposed to be in a secondary container, or that's too close to the generator and it's going to explode and kill you, or you've got black water leaking out of your RV, which you have to dig up that sand and take it with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gross.
but 80,000 people, over the course of 7 to 10 days for most people. Some people were there for 2 months, just building the city. Absolutely incredible.
Was it built on rock and roll?
Video actually killed the people that were going to build that, so it's fine.
Okay.
But I have my expectations were set very, very high, and they were not high enough. The art was incredible. The people are incredible. It's a gifting economy, so decommodified. There's nothing to purchase there outside of ice, which is done through 2 or 3 camps, Arctica and a few others. And it's been interesting getting back to what you call the default world. I had a bit of a decompression along the way. As I was driving an RV home with some friends, we stopped off at Summer Lake Hot Springs, which is a just awesome little hot springs place where there's a hot springs and a barn. It looks like something out of a cowboy movie. But I met a couple of rocket scientists. I'm having some very interesting conversations in my Twitter DMs now. Things that are like way above my pay grade, but I think I'm grokking just enough of it to enjoy it. So I got a chance to play drums in the Great Circle when Ember Arts, which is my fire spinning crew, when they were spinning before the Man Burn. And the Man Burn was absolutely incredible. There was this amazing fireworks show, which kind of felt like it dragged on for a little bit. And then suddenly there was an explosion, and literally it engulfed the man in flames and went just boom. And we were sitting close enough that my eyebrows got a little shorter. So, yeah, very, very cool, weird. Anyone that kind of takes a, I don't know, there's sort of the burnier than thou attitudes that, everyone's doing Burning Man wrong. There's a lot of stuffed shirts. I think that kind of know what this is supposed to be. It's what it's supposed to be for them. For me, I had an amazing time. I was standing out in a sandstorm, basically arms spread wide, going, "Is this all you've got?" It wasn't, and it kicked my ass shortly after that. So,
are you not entertained?
It was not. As soon as I went over the handlebars of my bike, it was. But and that's the other thing is, the dust of the playa is alkali. The pH of baking soda is 8. The pH of Black Rock City is 9. So it literally, like, you can feel it eating the skin on your body and all of the things that you bring out there. And so, you've got to clean everything off as soon as you get home. Vinegar. And if you're like, I did not go barefoot at all because you can basically get the opposite of trench foot, which is terrifying. So, yeah, it's called playa foot. And it's just anytime you put something in front of the word foot, we're just like, I didn't become a pediatrician for a reason. This is horrifying. But yeah,
the burn.
Really, really great. Honestly, one of the coolest things from a tech perspective, there is, why is this thing not focusing? There's an art car called Mayan Warrior. It's built on, I think, a Peterbilt truck platform. And this thing was $1 million to build this car because it's got lasers and a sound system that when the bass kicks in, it feels like a sonic weapon. So, had an amazing time. I got a chance to find some conclusions to some parts of my life. They burned something called the Temple on the last day, and I kind of threw some things in there, and that was the last bits of the old me. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to going back next year. Interestingly enough, I'm heading to Merritt this weekend for Burn in the Forest, which is the regional Burning Man event, which I have had nothing to do with planning. And I'm literally just driving up there, but I did help out with a little bit of music for the show at the end. So, yeah.
Just this time of year, that name kind of makes me nervous.
Well, so here's the thing. There's no fire allowed. You're not even allowed to have cigarettes.
Everyone's called Burn in the Forest.
Well, so what I've said to them, because Burn in the Forest is BITF, right? I said, well, why don't we call it, because we're doing LED stuff, so let's call it Glow in the Mountains, which is get them.
Oh.
Get them.
Nice.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your report. Sounds like 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Absolutely not. Like I said, it is survival
10
camping.
out of 10 would not recommend.
It's survival camping, and like even veteran burners said that this was a test. Mm-hmm. And the question is, in 2023, are we gonna be like, wow, 2022 was horrible, or from here on, 2022 was the first year like this? This could be climate change run amok. So don't know, but I'm going back next year no matter what. I'm just not sure all the folks are, because there were some sore minds, sore bodies, sore souls just dealing with all of that. The weather was oppressive. And I mean, sometimes the Burning Man is you.
Well, people have been burning for a certain Twitter feature for years and years, and we're getting ever closer to getting it. We've talked about it a few times here on Momentous Live. And Twitter Blue users who pay, was it $4 US a month? A certain subset of them may be testing that out. And that is an edit button. But we've got other Twitter news this week. A little bit more follow-up too. We had last week, or the week before, we spoke about a Twitter whistleblower, Peter Zatko, who's the former head of security at Twitter, who really railed against Twitter's lax security policies. And when making his statement in front of I believe it was a Senate Judiciary Committee, he got into a bit more detail, including saying that the company had a Chinese agent on the payroll. And then in other Twitter news this week, again, the ongoing saga, will they or won't they? The Twitter shareholders approved the $44 billion merger that Elon Musk is trying to get out of. So, Tasia, being our official Momentous Twitter correspondent, is going to lead us through each of those that she sees fit to, because we've got lots of stories to get through today. And how excited are you about Twitter button there, Tasia?
Okay, so yeah, real quick on the edit button. It is just for people that subscribe to Twitter Blue. And also, this is not an excuse for you to tweet whatever you want and then think you can just edit it and have the original heinous tweet gone. Because much like we've come accustomed to, there's going to be like a little edit icon, a little button, and you will see the complete revision history of that tweet. So keep that in mind. But Twitter basically teased everybody at the beginning of the month. I think they sent out that tweet that says, "This is an edited tweet. We're testing it." It was just like sent everybody, ablaze. But it's just for those that subscribe to Twitter Blue. But pretty cool.
With a little bit of indication of what some of the interface might look like, showing the pencil and last edited with a time and date stamp there. And then one surmises that you may be able to click through and see the various edits. Now, there are some limitations. I believe is it 5, you have a maximum of 5 edits and you have to do them within half an hour, something like that?
Yes. Which is, I mean...
How many typos are you making?
Exactly. And the time limit thing honestly isn't really that big of a deal, because unless it's like hours later, then you realize you made a mistake, like grammatically or something, or spelled something wrong, but it's really not too big of a deal. I don't know that I'll pay for Twitter Blue to get the edit button though.
Well, yeah, they raised the price from $2.99 US to $4.99 US recently. And Gray, are you paying for Twitter Blue?
I am.
Have you seen this feature show up yet, or is it's not to everyone?
I think it's coming at the end of the month. Do you already have it?
Yeah, I do.
Oh man, lucky.
I know. I think it's because I use the undo feature of Twitter Blue so much. They put me in the top tier of people who's probably screwing up their tweets. So that's why I've got Twitter Blue. I'm like, I've completely forgotten a word there. That's
well, knowing how quickly you write, Gray, having worked together a lot in the past, and you have the 1-2. You need every writer needs an editor, and so you get the speed demons and you get the anal aggressives, retentives, and
speaking of speed
match
demons,
made in heaven. Yeah,
you were asking me to recap Burning Man in 30 seconds.
Unfair. I know it's on our rundown. Okay. So moving on to our next, we'll let Greg kick off the next little bit on the Twitter whistleblower before we let Tasia go ahead. But yes, the Chinese agent on the payroll, according to Peter Zatko.
So this is great because Twitter is actually in very good company, because there are quite a few companies that have Chinese agents on the payroll. Mar-a-Lago probably being the most prominent one. That's the joke.
We waited for that. All right.
I think that's pretty good. So here, here's the thing. The question now becomes, looking at Twitter's their approach to, again, the former president and quite a few other issues. We put down to what's his nuts with the beard there, Jack
Dorsey. Jack.
What's his nuts? That's a good name for him.
He's probably got nuts in that beard.
Yeah, well, squirrels are for it. But looking at this, it's just, so how much influence did foreign governments have on the former president's platform of choice, and how many decisions were guided by just kind of keeping him in the spotlight, which I think actually really weakened the American position. So it'll be interesting to see. They were informed of this. Where did that go? And who made the decision not to follow up on it?
Tasia, anything to add?
Just the fact that this isn't like the first instance of this. So apparently they've had foreign agents before. So it might just be something we want to keep our eye on.
And it's probably not unique to Twitter either.
No, exactly. No. It's like, duh.
Well, I mean, the whole 50s through the 90s were dominated by, we found someone who was actually a double agent. It happens so many times. So this is just everything old is new again.
And finally, Tasia, do you think now that the Twitter shareholders have approved the $54.20 per share purchase agreement, which is a fair premium on the current stock price at the moment, just whatever we may discover in terms of the number of bots on the Twitter platform, if it's higher than the 5% that they claimed, that Elon didn't ask for due diligence provisions and just like went in, guns a-blazing. Do you think this is, they're going to go their separate ways? It's going to be a long, protracted thing. They're going to force the purchase. What's your take on this, this unending saga?
I think it's going to play out for a while because he's still going to want to try to get out of it. Obviously, they approved this. Like the share price, they're like, yes, unanimously, yes. So like, that doesn't surprise me. But I don't think it's not going to help or hinder his case either way. Like he's moving forward with that, and he's going to use one, if not many, whistleblowers in his defense in trying to get out of this. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it actually plays out and what the actual legal provisions were in the contract, because that's all the judge is going to care about. Because he can argue till he's blue in the face about all these other things, and this whistleblower said this, and the bots over here, and whatever. If that is not a specific outline and can't be argued that it's covered under provision whatever in the contract, he might be held accountable for it. But we'll see.
I mean, argue till he's Twitter blue in the face.
Pretty much.
Okay. In other kind of follow-up-ish news, last week was our Apple event extravaganza, talking about the release of the new AirPods Pro, Apple Watch, and iPhone models. Well, yesterday, Apple released watchOS 9 and iOS 16 and iPadOS 16 and macOS Ventura will be coming out in October. Ventura. So, Gray, unfortunately, you were not able to join us last week, but I'm sure you've consumed a fair bit of content around the event. And now we've got these new operating systems for folks to download and install on their devices. I know Tasia and I are in the same camp. We usually wait until at least one or two point updates on there. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing in watchOS 9 and iOS 9, Gray?
iOS 16.
Sorry,
iOS 16,
yes. Yeah.
Honestly, it's one of those things where, I cracked a joke a couple of years ago that I've stopped doing dangerous things like installing beta software and instead just jump out of planes and set things on fire. And so
it's installing software.
I went through this entire cycle, and only yesterday was I thinking, it's probably close to the Gold Master. I should check it out. And because I've been out of the loop for a couple of weeks, I had no idea where they were in the cycle. So this morning when I got up, I'm like, hey, new operating system. Absolutely loving like the lock screen widgets and the portrait photos where they're kind of going in front of the time like they do on the watch. Mm-hmm. Cool. Like useful. It's not productive, but it's cool. Looking at watchOS 9, I didn't realize, but Ray actually has an Apple Watch 3. And I have an Apple Watch 4 because I had a Series 0 before. Mm-hmm. So she's been left behind on this particular one, except for one thing. Uh-huh. On September the 23rd, not one, but 2 Apple Watch Ultras.
Oh, yes.
Will be arriving in this house. Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
We're going on a diving vacation later this year. And so we were talking about getting dive computers. And the dive computer I was looking at buying for Ray was $2,000. The Apple Watch Ultra is priced ridiculously well. Like, just looking at this, I mean, you've got all these great features in watchOS 9, right? There's the temperature tracking. There is temperature tracking for women specifically. Tasia, I know we were talking about that a little bit earlier in the week. Who was it that had written that article? It was...
Oh, wasn't his name Jesse? He's a dick.
Was it
I'm going to call him out. Yes, for Digital Trends.
Okay, you know what?
He wanted to mansplain a lot about how it's not worth getting the Apple Watch Series 8 because only a niche portion of people will benefit from this. Except
that one feature.
But does half the planet actually track things that closely? I mean, aside from Catholics?
Maybe they should. Right. But honestly, that guy's been spitting bad takes for like 10 years. I can remember arguing with him when Twitter first came out. So it's just like, is this on purpose? Or did you just stumble into this level of stupidity? But so looking at this, like the better run tracking, some of the cool stuff that they've got here, being able to set entry and exit points on GPS with this, 2-channel GPS now, incredibly handy in the water. Because the one thing that I'm not great at is underwater navigation. And it's essential. And now I've got a GPS. I'm like, it's a little like when your teacher said you wouldn't have a calculator with you. You're like, nah. What would I?
And it's got a built-in compass too, does it not?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if that'll work underwater.
It will.
Nice.
So looking at all these cool features, WatchOS 9 is absolutely gorgeous. One stupid thing they did was they've removed the ability to have the all red modular screen, because that is now the night mode on the Apple Watch Ultra, and it's no longer available on the Apple Watch series. I think that's going to get reversed, but it's taking anything away from users. Dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm gonna send an at Tim later on and be like, yo, Tim Apple. No.
Good morning.
Good morning. But honestly, like looking at this, the thing that blows my mind, Apple Watch Ultra is $50 US more than the stainless steel model. This thing has a 75% bigger battery. It is
Bigger
ruggedized. It has a better microphone rate. $50 more. This is probably the best deal in the Apple Watch family, outside of stealing one. So we went with the 2 Ocean bands, and then I've got every other band coming from AliExpress for less than $60. Because
Very cool.
yeah.
So anything else to add from the others about WatchOS? And anyone here install WatchOS 9 or iOS 16?
Doing it right now.
Oh, you did it, Tasia?
I did it because I'm working on a YouTube video for iOS 16 and wish it was done by now, but it was a day. So anyway, but it's amazing. But that'll be my pick of the week because I want to talk a little bit more about that later.
Gotcha.
But WatchOS 9 has been pretty good too. There's like different font, a little bit of different haptics I've noticed. I haven't had too much time today to like mess around too much with it. Different notifications like we see a little bit in iOS 16 as well, but so far everything's running smooth.
Nice. There is an epic MacStories.net review of WatchOS 9. The MacStories.net is kind of taken over from Ars Technica when it comes to deep dives on certain operating systems. They also have quite an in-depth iOS 16 review, which is available for paid subscribers, but the WatchOS 9 one is just available for free to anyone who wants to visit the website. And anything and everything you ever wanted to learn about WatchOS 9 is in this review. So we will leave that in the show notes here. Has anyone installed iOS 16? Did you dare, Gray?
I did.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Honestly, Gold Master releases now are pretty solid, unlike this camera today. I blame the cat.
Always blame the cat. He's so good looking, though. How can you blame him? That face.
Well, that's the thing. The camera can't contain handsomeness of that magnitude.
Yes.
So, all right.
All right.
So one last little bit in Apple news, and we'll leave, again, the links for the iOS 9 and iOS 16 articles covering all the features. We did talk a bit about them back in June when they were covered at WWDC, Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. But this week, last week, in addition to the iPhone September event, there was also a Code conference, which Code was originally started by Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberg, a couple of legendary tech journalists, and I believe it's been going for about 20 years. It's had a few different names. It used to be called All Things D, and this is the last Code conference that Kara Swisher was going to be actively involved in. But at said conference, she and Tim Cook and Johnny Ive sat down to reminisce a little bit about the olden days and Steve Jobs in particular, and announce the launch of something called Steve Jobs Archive, which you can find at stevejobsarchive.com. And also Lorraine Powell Jobs, which Steve Jobs' widow was also part of the conversation. And Tim, Johnny, and Lorraine started this archive featuring all sorts of previously unreleased documents and other media that Steve Jobs produced over the years, including a September 2010 email that he sent to himself. This was about a year before he died, and some really interesting reflections there. talking about I grow little of the food I eat, and of the little I do grow, I did not breed or perfect the seeds. I do not make any of my own clothing. I speak a language I did not invent or refine. I did not discover the mathematics I use. I am protected by freedoms and laws I did not conceive of or legislate, and do not enforce or adjudicate. I am moved by music I did not create myself. When I needed medical attention, I was helpless to help myself survive. I did not invent the transistor, the microprocessor, object-oriented programming, or most of the technology I work with. I love and admire my species, living and dead, and am totally dependent on them for my life and well-being. So someone in reflection mode, in the maybe thinking that they might not have that much more time on the planet. So that's just one example of some of the content you'll be able to find on stevejobsarchive.com for anyone who has ever dismissed him as, just merely a marketing guy. That just betrays one's ignorance of his history in computing. Probably wasn't that super hardcore technical engineer, but did a fair bit of tech stuff over the years and had a pretty deep understanding of how computers work, especially at the operating system level. If you see any of his talks during the next years, when he was outside of Apple for a while, lost in the wilderness, starting a whole nother computer company, not to mention Pixar and whatnot. So there's all some interesting interviews, speeches, papers and whatnot, and they're going to continue to grow it. And of course, you can stay connected by offering them your email address and get further updates there. It's not so much a hagiography, but it's just further reading for those who are interested in the life of someone critically important in the history of technology, especially as it relates to regular everyday consumers, because we've all got this black mirror carrying around in our hands, thanks in no small part to Steve and Johnny and Tim, of course. Anything to add, any of you, on our little trifecta of Apple stories there?
I miss Steve.
No.
Miss Steve, yep. And he was so young.
What was he? I can't remember.
50-something, wasn't he?
Yeah, late 50s. I think 58-ish. Yeah.
Old enough to know better that you don't treat pancreatic cancer with juice, but
yeah.
I'm still upset.
Yeah. So I'm just going to chuck this. Can I chuck something out here? I was with a family member, and they had been diagnosed with cancer, and we were going through the treatment options, and the oncologist explained that one treatment was, a certain drug, another treatment was chemotherapy, and the third treatment was no treatment. And my family member said, "I'm not doing a Steve Jobs," which the doctor had zero sense of humor for, which was even more funny, is that they were so defensive about it. Like, well, I have to explain all the options. That's an option for some people, is doing nothing. And I was like, just slow your roll. We're team all science here, so don't worry about it, okay? We're with you, buddy.
All right, moving on. Believe it or not, we've got a little bit more follow-up and a whole bunch of stories in this realm. We'll just take us through a quick cursory overview of them. We've talked in the past, over the last few months, about a number of AI image generation tools, such as DALL-E, DALL-E Mini, which is now known as Crayon, Midjourney, and now Stable Diffusion, we just talked about a few weeks ago, which is like some of those things, but with some of the restrictions taken off as regards image generation of regarding public figures and whatnot. Well, just a couple of weeks ago, an AI-generated artwork won first place at a state fair fine arts competition. And let's just say that some of the actual human artists are not so happy about that. When you look at the image, it's quite cool. And some people are claiming, well, this is not fair because, a computer did it, which kind of betrays a bit of lack of understanding of how this all works. In order to get an image like that, you don't just throw in a few words and you take your first result. It takes quite a lot of refinement to get the right prompts to have the sort of image you're looking for actually generated for you. So that's one story. But then in response to stories like this, we've got some online art communities are beginning to ban AI generated images. Because and so maybe we will have some pure AI generated images websites. Stable Diffusion that we've talked about, and it's got some different angles to DALL-E, but it's going open source, so people are getting to play with it. And some issues that this speaks to is, as we start to generate these artificial images, and as they get better and better, it's going to be harder and harder for us to tell what's real and what's not. And that's going to get very interesting. Further to Stable Diffusion, there's a new search engine that's been launched called Lexica, where you can do a search for over 10 million images that have already been generated in Stable Diffusion. So, for example, if I wanted to, type in, I want to look for some ninja images and I didn't want to create my own prompts, I just type in ninja and it'll show you a whole bunch of other ninja imagery that other people have created. And it will show you the prompts that they use, such as ultra realistic illustration, ninja man in a black hood, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really interesting to see all the stuff that's being done already. And some niches are quite well populated and others not so much. But you can learn from the prompts that people are using to help craft your own prompts to generate images for your own projects, be they for private or public consumption. Furthermore, there's a new app that's been released called Diffusion Bee, which is a graphical interface app for M1 Macs, and I assume M2 Macs as well. It remains to be seen on that, but you need to be running macOS Monterey or newer. I just downloaded it onto my laptop before the show. Unfortunately, I'm still running Big Sur because reasons.
It's insane.
And
it's insane.
Did you try it out? You can generate these images on your own M1 Mac now.
That's
no.
Okay, so stay with me on this. This actually does feel like magic, right? There is a powerful arcane device that we have to use the appropriate words, and it will manifest things based on those words. This is magic. Straight up, this is Harry Potter shit. Right? You got to say the right words. Boom. You got to think.
It's really creepy.
Now, Will, you have used, I'm digging around looking for the images that you had sent me. You reminded me that you had used Midjourney, which is one of these tools that we've talked about in the past, to generate some images for a looper that you did recently. And It was Boss Level Beats, if I recall.
Yes. So actually, I have to give credit where credit's due. My friend Corey Rollins actually subscribes to Midjourney, and he created the base image for me. Mm-hmm. I had done some Midjourney explorations and used all my free trial, so he generated one for me. And like Ray said, I think there's a huge potential here. I'm starting to see some things that are becoming a bit cliche with some of these image generators, but I really do think that there's a lot of power here in terms of prototyping, in terms of concepting. And, I took what I liked from the image that was generated, and then I drew and composited a bunch of other stuff onto it. So it's not just, straight chucked out, because I think I explained it to you guys, like the original image, it was like meat hands basically. So it just kind of generated into this disgusting pile of spaghetti meat at the end of one of his hands. So I had to go in and clean it up. It wasn't usable as it was. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential here, and I really loved the power of it. It was a cool sort of exploration for me as someone who, I don't really think of myself as an artist, but I create things, and I enjoyed trying something new. And when Corey showed me the image, I thought, oh man, that feels like a video game. That looks like Akira from Street Fighter, or Akira or Kuma from Street Fighter, and I really love that idea. What if I just made it better? Because there was clearly some problems with So yeah, there's the meat hands that we're talking about. Also, the torso is just a little bit too squat. The muscles aren't quite in the right place. So yeah, there's just problems with the original. It's also a little bit too dark. There's just a bunch of little things that I did to it. Some of it was just tweaking colors and foreground and background, things like that, color temperatures and the midtones and the shades, shadows. So yeah, I think there's some things. I think people who just look at it and go, "This is a threat to art," are too much in their own thing. I think that this is not going to replace people who know how to oil paint. Okay, this is there is still something to be said for people who artistic and compose things. This just will help with ideas, will help expand palettes. It will blur lines, definitely. But I think there's just a lot of good stuff in there. And I think that we often get really negative when things like this come out, or people draw lines, or people get defensive about this destroying art. I don't think art's going anywhere. Art may change. This may be another tool, but I really don't think this is the end of art or artists. So that's just my personal feeling on it. And I think it's dead for embracing new things and seeing how you can use them.
Well, if you want some insight into the sorts of things that are in people's minds when they're trying out tools like this, including Stable Diffusion in Lexica, just do a search for something like Pikachu and look at all the very strange types of Pikachus that get generated, including, Pikachu as Mario. We got some sexy Pikachus. We got, like Pikachu with Mona Lisa and all
Sexy
sorts
Mario
of
Pikachu.
Why are there so many sexy Pikachus?
Well,
Okay, so
it's a subculture. Let's.
Huh. Seems to be an overwhelming amount of sexy Pikachus.
a lot of folks that are out there into the shock mouse. I'm saying that's a thing.
Oh boy.
That's
Getting
All right.
worse. The further you scroll, it's getting worse.
Yeah, goes downhill.
34. So here's well, you were saying that it's cliche for some of these online generators. Is it possible that these things might actually plateau? They might have creatively bankrupt moments. They might get writer's block. I'm really looking forward to seeing a quantum computer just stuffed with angst because it can't come up with the next chapter. That's when we know we've hit the future.
Well, the other thing that I'm noticing is that you can tell. Do you know what I mean? Like the number of people who came to me and said, "You used Midjourney." Like people have seen enough of them to know what is pumped out of it. And I actually sort of was a little defensive. It's like, well, it was Midjourney, but it wasn't all Midjourney. I spent 5 hours fixing that thing. Let me show you the meat hands on that sucker when I started. So I did feel sort of defensive. That is me too. That's not just Midjourney. I use Midjourney, but it's. I think
Midjourney worked with me. I didn't work with Midjourney.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm the headliner here.
Moving on to other news in AI dystopias. Recently came out this AI stalks influencers in the wild to expose the horrors of high-tech surveillance. So this one intrepid researcher named Dries de Puerter was basically crawling open cameras and cross-referencing them with Instagram posts over the course of weeks and weeks, and then matching these images up, and you can see how a lot of times it's influencers, they're what they're doing to get their perfect their perfect shot, and you can see them on these open cameras, and then you see the finished shot as it appeared on Instagram. What's a little unsettling about this is how many open cameras there are. I mean, we've heard of CCTV being deployed around the world, especially in places like the UK. London has got thousands and thousands of closed circuit TV cameras, but a lot of folks might not be aware of these whole open cameras. And back in the 90s, it was people would put a webcam online and point it at a coffee pot so they could tell whether it needs to be refilled and so on. But there's a lot of these open cameras that are pointing into very public places. And when we're in the public, we don't have it. Technically, we don't have a right to privacy per se. But once you start seeing people cross-referencing these cameras to what people are posting on their, to be fair, public Instagram feeds, it just gets people thinking and gets people talking. So Tasia, as an influencer in your own right, what are your thoughts on this sort of use of AI? And does it make you think a little bit differently about how the sorts of things that you might post and where? I'm not sure. I know you're not like overly, selfiegram type person online. As we know, there's some people that's what they live for. What are your thoughts on this development?
It's like what I tell you guys all the time. We are on camera 24/7.
Yeah.
So act like it. So to me, as much as it sounds creepy, like I think more the creepy part of this is like that he went and like cross-referenced everything and like found these influencers and stuff on like Instagram and everything. And like that to me was like maybe the more deep-seated weird part. But in all honesty, the concept of like, having like an open cam doesn't really upset me that much. Like, as it's not really being used for like nefarious purposes in this case. Also, as somebody who watches a lot of true crime shows and listens to a lot of true crime podcasts, I just want to reiterate, you will never get away with murder.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ever.
Again?
You hear that, Zodiac? We're coming for you, buddy.
Because if the cops can't find you on their CCTV, the internet will on the open cams, okay? They'll track my every move, which means they'll track your every move. So don't even try it.
So in short, you're not particularly concerned that if you're showing up on any of these open cams and or being cross-referenced with Instagram. And I don't think this fellow was doing it for creepy reasons, more like to raise awareness. Like, hey, this is all out there. And, if someone like me can do this, that law enforcement can do it and so on.
Exactly. I think to me, it would only be upsetting if someone is using it for like doxing purposes or nefarious reasons that, I would certainly hope like your private home wouldn't be right there. And, like that. So stuff like that would be a little concerning. But this particular instance, no. I just think it's wild that it cross-referenced everybody. And I want to know the influencers' reactions. Like, do we know any of their reactions? Like, were they like, this is so cool because it's press? Or were they like, oh my God, you saw me like at my moment of 7 million poses in front of this building.
And then they make it sound like the screaming goat.
Right.
Yeah. Can I tell you a funny story about Instagram influencers? So decommodification means that you don't take pictures for your sponsored Instagram profile on the playa at Burn. And so wow, it just went to night mode. Very cool. I love when that happens. And so in order to this, there is a phenomenon. They're actually reaching back into Burning Man history. Something, I have to pardon me for the words here, shirt cockers. And these are people who will go outside with a shirt on with near any pants.
Winnie the Pooh style.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
So this year, someone actually orchestrated a shirt cocker march. And they went around looking for people with professional cameras in their, Burning Man outfits, and would stand in the background of the photos, and just give them the shaft.
That's funny. So I have a question then. So nobody's allowed to take like photos there, or just for?
You can take pictures, but you can tell when somebody's got, the Canon with the white lens, and the guy that she's given orders to, and there are 4 or 5 different outfit changes. Yeah.
Or like every celebrity that goes to Burning Man and then posts epic photos after?
Sometimes.
In 7 outfits.
It's kind of interesting because I actually saw a number of celebrities who were volunteering with their camps.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I also did see some art cars that weren't letting people on, and they're supposed to because they're supposed to be public transit for people. So, there's some things that are, there's actually now doing it wrong at burningman.com where you can actually email them and let them know, like, this camp was a plug and play or a turnkey. It means people just pay money and show up instead of actually, like, doing the work. But yeah, the shirt cockers were hilarious, and I had many a chuckle over the course of that day. That's my story.
Sticking with Tasia, we've got a couple of bits of Chromebook news. There's a brand new HP Elite Dragonfly Chromebook, which has been getting good reviews for its hardware. I mean, it's north of $1,000 US. Remember when Chromebooks were all about accessibility and education, and $300, $400, and then we started to see higher end ones, like Google's own Pixelbook, which could show people what could be done with the platform, just like Microsoft has been doing with the Surface, to show what could be done with the Windows platform and hybrid or convertible laptop/tablet devices. Well, in the 1-2 punch, we've got this fantastic HP hardware, and then we also got news that Google has canceled its next Pixelbook because they're quite in a pickle, and shut down the team building it. They're getting out of the laptop game altogether. And Tasia is our official Google correspondent. Now, you've never received a review unit of a Pixelbook or Chromebook, have you?
No.
So
I understand their play, because really it's like they already built the operating system. You know what I mean? So like everybody else is just using, it's called the Chromebook, for Pete's sakes. So, like you could have a Samsung or an HP or whatever, name whatever. And they almost every line has a Chromebook or multiple Chromebook models, typically a lot less than $1,000 US. So it doesn't shock me. I think they had mentioned that they were going to start paring down some of their product lines, which makes sense that they would focus on the Chrome OS. But the expense of like that Dragonfly one, that's the HP one, I think it's just because it's kind of like it's a laptop / almost acts as a tablet in one and can flip in a bunch of ways, which a lot can, by the way. Just FYI, again, for under that price. But I haven't been able to like review this, so I can't speak too much about if it's worth that price. But generally, I would say to somebody, if you're getting a Chromebook for someone that just needs access to the internet, you're not getting it to store files, you're not doing maybe heavy workload on it. You can, of course, with handy dandy Google Drive. But other than that, you're basically using it as like maybe like a commuter laptop, or, maybe like you'd get it for a family member or something that really just needs quick access. They're retired maybe, and they don't need to work on Word documents or anything because you're getting Chrome OS. You know what I mean? So I don't know that you need to spend, what I'm saying is you don't need to spend north of $1,000 for that. I don't care how many times it flips.
And just to remind folks out there, Chrome OS is basically, it's a web browser, and you can install Chrome plugins in your web browser, and you can run, and now in the last couple of years you can run Android apps. And that's it. Limited onboard storage. It's really a cloud connected device. That's what it's geared for. And Google, like we discussed with Snap last week as well, is paring down. Like a lot of these tech giants are kind of like taking a look at what's essential. And it seems like some are battening down the hatches for some potential rocky economic times ahead, a little bit of uncertainty. So they're deciding. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, is like, okay, well, taking a look at what are the essentials here? Where do we make our money? And it's 90 is over. It's still north of 90% on advertising, and that's from Google search ads and YouTube. They make maybe a bit of money from Android licensing, and of course their services and whatnot through the Google Play Store. But they're probably not making a ton of money from Pixelbooks. So.
No. I would love to know. I'd love to actually do the numbers on this to see all the projects that Google has invested money in and then strangled while they're still in the crib. If they had to just put that into refining and innovating their ad platform, would they actually have more money than everyone else put together? Probably. So maybe just stop buying things and killing them, and let us have the things that we had. Stop taking them away from us.
Well, maybe now that they can refocus on Chrome OS itself, since one of the criticisms of this HP Elite Dragonfly is the software side of things. So if Google focuses less on the hardware, for at least when it comes to laptops and convertibles, and more on the software, that will help enable the third-party manufacturers to do what they do best, which is hardware. And Google has shown not indicated in any way, shape, or form that they're getting out of the smartphone hardware business. The Google Pixel is still a strong brand. They're at about 2% market share in North America, to be fair, while
Crushing
Apple
it.
has just crossed the 50% threshold. So they're lucky them. Now they're antitrust regulators, monopoly time. So Apple's got to be careful there. But so we'll see. Hopefully, for Google's sake, that they can continue to increase market share, because right now they're just making the OS for Samsung and Lenovo and TCL, who and Motorola, who all outsell. Yeah, who all outsell Google's own Pixel smartphones, as great as they may be, as Tasia can attest.
So here's the thing. I've got the thing for Apple here. They need to now talk to you, Max, about making a clone iPhone. We've come full circle.
That's right. And then Lisa Jobs can come back and save the company, kill the licensing program. Okay.
It's like a season of Succession. I love it.
All right. Let's just a little bit of very quick look at a bit of gaming news. Not too much, because we don't want Tasia to fall asleep. So there were 2 events in the last day or two, one from Sony and one from Nintendo. Plus, we had a couple of other Sony stories that we didn't get a chance to talk about while Gray was away. And Gray, I'm going to throw to you on these Sony stories. And Will, feel free to jump in as you please. But a few weeks ago, there's a new Destiny 2 expansion, which is apparently giving everyone grappling hooks early next year. We'll get into that. You can take on whichever of these you wish, Gray. There's a new PS5 controller, the DualSense Edge, so a bit more hardware. We had talked previously about Sony releasing a new gaming monitor for PCs, which follows the same design language of the PS5. But these enhanced controllers are great for people who want to use them with their PS5 or with PCs or with iOS devices. And so September's State of Play event saw a whole bunch of new games and game trailers showing what's coming up on the PS5 platform. And lastly, there's a little story about, again, this was like a will they or won't they in terms of collectibles from PlayStation. Some people were calling them NFTs, and Sony was being very coy, and they're not talking about the blockchain or anything like that at all. So what the technology is behind the scene that's going to be powering this whole collectible ecosystem, I think, is still TBD. But so there's a few interesting Sony stories that have come out in the last 3 weeks or so. Hey, you can have a collectible PS3, and there's all these little mini statuettes there. So, Gray, of these Sony PlayStation stories, including all those games that were announced, what would you like to dive a little deeper on?
Let's do this rapid style. So, Destiny 2 has its expansion Lightfall coming out. It's got the same logo as Lightyear, which is kind of hilarious. The grappling hook is part of a new power in the darkness side. We were guardians who wield the light. We found darkness and stasis, and your bionic commando. And this is taking one of my favorite games from the 80s and putting it into my favorite game of now. I'm very, very stoked for it. They've done a really great job of refining all of this stuff. But the cool thing here as well is that there's a place that we did not know, a secret city on a moon of Neptune that has a branch of humanity that's evolved in a different way. Very cool stuff. Stoked to see it. It looks awesome. Right now we're in the season of the plunder. So basically they've turned us into pirates, and that is the best. Going on here, the PS5 control, the DualSense Edge, gives you back paddles, which is something that a lot of people have been modding into their systems or buying controllers that have that. They're more expensive. Hopefully they're more reliable than Microsoft's expensive custom-made controllers, because those things have the worst reputation outside of the original Xbox 360. But it looks like Sony's got a lock on this. The stuff in State of Play, the big one there for me, God of War Ragnarok. Kratos originally was a character on the PlayStation 2, has evolved almost into an old man Logan style thing. He had his wife and kids were killed years ago, and he just won't die. And so now he's raising a boy. And the first God of War for PlayStation 4 was amazing. It dealt with a lot of Norse mythology, as you basically went around and kicking Thor's ass and Balder and everyone else. So I'm looking forward to that one. The digital collectibles, man, do they know how to market to kids. This sucks. It's terrible. And we've seen stuff like this Just matter to it through games before. Sony's PlayStation Home at one point was something like this. It's crap. So if your kids want it, say no. Just no. Last thing here, what to do with your old PlayStation. A couple of things. This is great because if you do have a PlayStation 5 in the house, remote play means that you can actually play PlayStation 5 on both of these systems. And if not, you can find a friend, hi Morgan, who you can give your PlayStation to so that they can enjoy it while you enjoy your PlayStation 5. And that...
Oh, you beat me. I didn't get a chance to get that article up. Here it is right here. It was an article from Wired Magazine from just over a month ago. What to do with your old PS4. I mean, if you're Tristan, you just keep it and keep using it. I never got a PS4 because I'm still using my PS3s.
I've got 2 of those if you want one. Jeff's got my original PlayStation 4. Morgan's got my PlayStation 4 Pro.
Seeding the future generations of gamers. Maybe Tasia would like one.
Right? Tasia? Yeah?
I'll sell it.
I got some of those Pixel books.
All right. So, not to be outdone, Nintendo had their Nintendo Direct Fall Showcase, where again they announced a number of games, and we saw some trailers revealed there. And as I bring that up right here, we saw teasers for Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Harvestella, and Bayonetta. What is this? It sounds like all Italian.
Bayonetta, yeah.
And
do you remember the original Bayonetta?
Yeah,
I remember. Fire Emblem Engage, It Takes Two, Fatal Frame. I have to admit, I'm not familiar with any of these. Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
These are all sequels.
SpongeBob SquarePants, The Cosmic Shake. Wow, yeah, looks like...
That's actually in the same universe as Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you know.
Fitness Boxing of the North Star. Oddballers.
That sounds amazing.
Tunic, Front Mission 1 and 2, Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life, and Octopath Traveler 2. Yeah, like a lot of existing IP here. Fae Farm,
that have grown up.
Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line, Mario and Rabbids. Is that Rayman related? Is that
yes? Yeah.
Okay. And Rune Factory 3. Tasia, excited all this stuff?
Yeah,
huge upgrade from Rune Factory 2.
And some N64 additions to Nintendo Switch Online, including the one game that I'm kind of interested in here, GoldenEye 007, which made its debut on the Nintendo 64. Will, how excited are you about GoldenEye being released and available not only for Nintendo Switch, but also for Xbox platform?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super psyched. This is one of the all-time classics, not just of Nintendo, but period in games. I think it's one of the ones that really exploded a lot of first-person shooters. This dates back to 96 or 97. I mean, obviously we had things like Doom and Wolfenstein before that, but this was one thing that really expanded multiplayer and
in-person co-op. Loved it.
Yes. Now, for a long time, this was a bit of a holy grail. I know that this isn't the first time we've seen it reemerge, partly just because licensing was going to be so difficult in terms of getting it released and renewing the license for GoldenEye and for the music and things like that. So there was certainly some concern every time that, people want to see it on a new platform like the Switch and things like that. But so I'm really psyched. I think the remastering, it's always funny when I look at remastered versions. I'm like, that's how it originally looked like, right? And then you see the original and you're like, whoa, I thought that was awesome at the time. So yeah, I'm super psyched for it. In terms of, you guys went through the rundown there.
And there's even more. We only got through half of them.
Yeah, there's very few of those that I'm very excited about personally. The PlayStation, I was probably more excited about some of the announcements there, particularly God of War, as Gray went through. I mean, some of these are just I'm interested in from the Nintendo ones. Like, I like Lego, so Lego Brick Tales is interesting. The Mario Strikers, because I like soccer, and I like Mario games. There's a Disney racing game, which may be absolute poopy stinky, but I love those type of battle racing games. That's what that is. Like a Mario Kart. I'm addicted to Mario Kart whenever I play it. Zero interest in Bayonetta. But yeah, so I think for me, yeah, GoldenEye is probably the thing that I'm most interested in from there. I've never been a big Zelda guy. I know people are huge Zelda heads or fans. I'm all for it. I was talking to a friend of the show, Jerome, a while ago, and he's a big fan of the Zelda game that came out for Switch a few years ago. I forget the name of it, but so yeah, some people are huge fans. I'm just have never been that big into Zelda.
Nobody's perfect.
Okay. Yes.
Well, I think what we're seeing from both of these slates of announcements is that the Sony and the Nintendo ecosystem seem to be pretty healthy. I mean, there's a concerning amount of like retreading going on in terms of IP, but there's some new IP in there as well. Gray, before we move on to our last couple of bits before we wrap up, anything to add on the Nintendo front here?
Nope.
Okay.
Can I just say one more thing?
No.
We also had something called D23 on the weekend, which is the big Disney thing. I'm not going to go into that. I'm a huge guy into all this stuff. There's a lot of Marvel announcements and a lot of movie announcements. There's also a lot of theme park announcements. And one of the big things in the theme parks that's been a guiding force, and this reminds me of it, is that everything needs to be IP. And actually, my wife was kind of annoyed because there's
intellectual property for those.
Intellectual property,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
There's one section of Disney California Adventure, or DCA as some people call it, where it's sort of like San Francisco theme, and they're redoing it to San Francisco from Big Hero 6. So they're just basically reskinning it. So it's like San Francisco, but they gotta have an IP in there. So some people are very annoyed by that because we're not getting a ride, we're just getting a reskin. And so it's sort of like, why does everything have to be IP? And I'm like, isn't San Francisco IP? Like, isn't that does someone own that intellectual property? City of San Francisco, maybe? I don't know.
Golden Gate Bridge?
Yeah, Golden Gate Bridge. So, yeah, anyways, I just wanted to interject. That seems to be the way the world's going, by the way. Disney has a mandate to put IP on everything. So,
well, maybe we'll dive a little deeper into D23 next week. But one last little gaming thing from last week, in case you missed it. If you are still using Windows, and if you're transferring any files around and it's taking a long time, well, you can install a little plugin that will let you play Lunar Lander in your Windows copy dialog box.
Nice.
So, if Lunar Lander, that's from the late 70s, I believe. I played a lot of that as a kid in the arcades on the ferries. One of my favorite games. And look,
love it.
While Windows is moving files around, you can just play a little bit of Lunar Lander. But speaking of Disney, there was one trailer that jumped out at me this week, and that is for an upcoming TV series on Disney Plus next year. And it's a little something starring Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, and some people who may not have been able to connect with or relate to, say, Ms. Marvel or She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Well, maybe something like this will satisfy them, and that is Secret Invasion. Well, you want to give us a quick recap of what Secret Invasion is and what that this what kind of story? Because we're seeing Maria Hill, she's back, hooray!
Yeah, this is going to be a bit interesting how they do this. I mean, I've read the books, and obviously this is a huge storyline in comics throughout the years. I'll try to quickly just recap it. We've seen some of these aliens before. They're called Skrulls. In the books, they take human form. They're much more villainous in the books than what we've seen them so far in the MCU. In the movie Captain Marvel, where they were kind of sympathetic, almost like immigrants, and they were very humanized, and you saw children Skrulls and things like this. So it was something that threw me back, being a lifelong comic book fan, where Skrulls are very evil in the books, or typically have been historically. So I think that's sort of what we're seeing here. It's going to be interesting how it actually plays out, considering that part of this was a sympathetic story originally, and now they're now turning this into a full-fledged story. So we'll see how it goes. I'm certainly all in, and I'm very interested to see it.
Looks like it's got some spy thriller, almost Captain America Winter Soldier vibes to it, which I'm down for as well. So,
I mean, this is the scary part of Skrulls, right? Is that they replace you, and you don't know who's a human and who's a Skrull. This is a tale as old as time. Like, this is a scary movie thing, right? Like
Season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine?
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So we've seen this story many, many times. This is the Marvel version of it. These evil characters called Skrulls replace humans and try to take over the world. So
unlike Beauty and the Beast, where humans replaced dishes. Similar story, though.
Tale
Sure
as
it
old
can
as
be.
time.
all right. Picks of the week, starting with Tasia. This is going to be a little bit anticlimactic, and Tasia can explain why.
It would be anticlimactic. My pick of the week is iOS 16. We don't have to spend any time on it. Just know that it's great, and hopefully my video is coming tomorrow.
All right. And where can people find your upcoming video on iOS 16? And we'll talk about your current video in a few minutes, but...
Yes, youtube.com/Tasia Custodia.
All right. Will, what's your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is something called Welcome to Wrexham. I enjoyed it very much, but I am a soccer football fanatic. I think there is something for everyone here. Ryan Reynolds is very entertaining, and I enjoyed it. It's definitely an interesting tale. There's another one similar to this a few years back. Was like about Salford City. I forget the name of the documentary.
What's the premise of this one?
This one is a couple of Hollywood stars and by basically a semi-pro team in England, and have the hopes of getting it basically all the way up the English system of promotion, which is if you're a good team and you perform well, you go to the next league, and the next league.
You're promoted.
So you basically, at the pros, if you are Canadian and you're watching this, it would be the equivalent of if you were in the AHL and you were really good, you would get moved up to the NHL the next year. North Americans often... Yes. But North Americans often have a hard time with this promotion relegation idea, particularly the relegation part, which means you go down a league, because if teams are going up, someone has to go down.
Proof positive the Americans are not tough, right?
Yeah.
If your team losing doesn't mean that you go down a league, snowflakes. All of them.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's my feeling on it. I love the system of promotion relegation, and this is interesting because basically these people are buying something at its lowest point and trying to bring it all the way up through the tier system. Now, having said that, they keep on saying about, no spoilers, but Ryan Reynolds has movie star money. I hate to tell you, but if they really want to get it to the Premier League, they're going to need oil baron money. They're going to need exploitation money. Like, this is how you get into the Premier League.
Company. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And a cell phone company. Like, the man's into all of the vices that are kind of tasteful.
All the companies.
Yeah. He's not doing, like, legal heroin or anything like that, but he's got a cell phone company. Yes. He's got a gin company. Yeah. EV company next. Yeah. And Reynolds we trust.
And the other Hollywood celebrity involved there that he paired up with is Rob McElhenney from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and more recently, Mythic Quest on Apple TV Plus. So both funny lads. And so you'd mentioned, I think when we spoke the other day, Will, there's a little bit of Ted Lasso vibes to it, like if it was a documentary kind of thing?
Yeah, there's sort of Ted Lasso vibes. I mean, it's definitely these guys who are plucky Americans who are going in and trying to help English people in their own way. Yeah, and there's a lot of doubt about their intentions as well to begin with, but I really highly recommend it.
They seem very respectful of the town. They said they'll always make fun of themselves. They'll never make fun of the team or the people. I think that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too, for people who are concerned, like I don't know much about football, blah blah blah, or soccer. They do explain things. Like even what I talked about promotion relegation, they do one of the best explanations I've ever seen of people talking about it. So they explain things. As a football fan, I actually find they over-explain things sometimes, but I'm willing to let it go because I understand that it's for a broader audience. But there's some things that are kind of annoying, like the episode we watched the other day. They said someone used the word pitch, and then they needed to go on the screen like pitch in the UK is a field in oh, thank you.
Should just do it in the style of pop-up video.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Gray, your pick of the week.
Star Trek Lower Deck Season 3, it is back. We are on episode 4 this week. This is a show that, when I first heard about it, I thought it was going to be brilliant. A lot of people were absolutely incensed about the lack of respect this show was showing. And really, it's probably the most insightful criticism that Star Trek has ever had of itself. You can see Sisko's Creole Kitchen there from, again, Deep Space Nine. And just like the tropes that they take on, the folks who write this show know Trek. And it's actually animated by Titmouse Animation here in Vancouver. The California class, the Vancouver is one of the California class ships. It's the coolest and shiniest one, which I like a lot. But our main characters are back in the end of season 2. Mariner's mother was arrested for the destruction of the Pakled home planet.
Spoiler alert.
As you can see in the trailer, she might be back. Maybe it's a changeling. Who knows? Could be a Skrull. Anyway, the funniest thing about this show is that Ransom, the first officer, is played by Jerry O'Connell, who is married to Rebecca Romaine, who plays the first officer in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, who was just arrested at the end of the first season.
Right.
They are
the parallels.
Yeah, and they are actually Star Trek's first officer power couple, and that's a delight. Great show. Watch it on Crave,
nice,
iTunes, whatever. Yeah.
Awesome show.
I've really enjoyed the first couple of seasons myself, and have not cracked the third one yet. Can only manage so many shows simultaneously, and going to finish up a couple and then dive into this.
Cleanse your palate, and then
exactly. Looking forward to it, though. My pick of the week really quickly is a show that we talked about last October, and it finally launched about a month ago, and that is House of the Dragon, the prequel to Game of Thrones. And that is on HBO Max in the US and Crave here in Canada.
Also known as what the 11th Doctor was doing in the 900 years he was missing.
Exactly. Good old Matt Smith as Daemon Targaryen. And
I am looking. All right.
I have to admit that as much as I enjoyed Game of Thrones throughout, of course, season 8 was problematic, a little rushed, etc. Left a bad taste in a lot of folks' mouths. Right from the get-go, this House of the Dragon feels like they learned some lessons. The storytelling is a little simpler. They don't overwhelm too much with new characters. Like Game of Thrones for newcomers, especially those who hadn't read any books, could be a touch inaccessible because there's just so much coming at you so quickly. The storytelling is a little bit more simplified. It's got some fantastic acting, beautiful production values, costumes, sets, decent CG. Very, very good. All the money's up on the screen there. Of course, it's got a little bit of the HBO cringe in there. You got to get the gratuitous stuff here and there, and then some of the violence is a little. And then as we get into like episode 4, some of the Targaryens are going to Targaryen. No spoilers, but just wait till you get there. And I think for me, a great companion piece to this is a little mini series that is happening on the YouTube channel of a friend of the show, Ged Smythe, who has a Fabulous Flicks, and he is partnering with his sometime collaborator Rogue Leader. They often talk about various Star Wars series on Rogue Leader's channel. Well, on Ged's channel on Fabulous Flicks, they're going through and reviewing all of the House of the Dragon episodes. So there's lots of great stuff there. They pick up on things that you might not pick up on, that I might not pick up on, and just about 25 minutes, half an hour each. I don't really watch a ton of content about content because it's just like there's no time. But when it's a great friend of the show, and it's always interesting, it's a good laugh, and every time Ged starts cracking up, I start cracking up too. And we hope to have Ged back on the show sometime soon, and we can promote his channel even more. So we've got a couple of projects this week. Let's start with you, Will. You got some more beats for us?
Yeah, so I was super honored again to be invited to Portabilist Lounge collaboration. So basically, it's an event that happens in England. I hope to go someday. And as part of the event, they create a looper and pretty much a who's who of looper makers. And I added a track. And yeah, so I'm super thrilled to be invited again by my friend Zakal. And yeah, check it out. Lots of great beats on there. I think there's some like 40 beats, all by different artists. So just an amazing collection of talent. And,
you've been on a roll. You get
honored.
beats last week, beat this week. You're going to have beats next week too.
And maybe the week after
All
that.
the beats. Tasia, before we get to your iOS 16 video, which releases tomorrow, as teased a few minutes ago, you've got one that's been live for a few days. And what's that video all about?
Have you guys heard of Google Stack?
No.
I know. I hadn't either.
Hasn't it been canceled yet? Didn't Google kill it?
Highline.
No, it's actually not even technically like out of the experimental phase yet. It's from like their project or Area 120 project or whatever it's called. But it's basically like a smart PDF scanner. So it's right now only available on Android in the US, unfortunately, because it is in the experimental phase. But I'm pretty sure it came out like January of 2021, and it's really good. It's using AI to like pull out certain reference points of, say, like a receipt that you scan or something, so that it can automatically categorize it for you. It can pull out, the most pertinent information from that receipt for you. You can edit it all, of course, as well, if you wanted to, and reorganize everything. But it's just a really, really good way to keep all your documents, receipts, what have you, in order. And it's completely free. So I really hope that it moves out of the experimental phase and becomes available on iOS, and also outside of the US would be awesome.
Very cool. And one question though, how long is it until some aspiring web developer cross-references your receipts with open cameras and footage there?
And gets the number off your credit card and then...
Right?
Where can people find your videos and all your other work, Tasia?
That's at youtube.com/Tasia Custodi.
Nice. Or www.TasiaCustodi.com. Nice. And if you want to find out more about Momentous, there's one link you can follow now. It's momentus.tv/links.
Brilliant.
Like, comment, subscribe, all those things. Facebook, Instagram, Flickr, LinkedIn, Twitter, Vimeo. We're going to be fleshing some of those platforms out more as time goes on, as time allows.
Getting your profile set up on Flickr.
Well, we've had it there. That was one of our very first ones when we were like at CES back in like 2014 or whatever the heck it was. We had some stuff going with, what do you call it? Stuff going from Flickr automatically to Twitter and all those things. What were we using? What's the thing that connects things together? It wasn't Zapier.
Science.
It was the other thing. I can't even, old brain, whatever. Momentus.tv/links. Tasia. Oh, nice. Gray, William, thank you as always. To you and everyone else out there, we hope your week is truly momentous.